Very little is needed to make a happy life, wrote Marcus Aurelius nearly 2,000 years ago. Think about that for a moment. In a world where we're constantly told that happiness lies in the next big purchase, the next promotion, or the next upgrade, his words feel almost radical. Could it be that we've been looking for fulfillment in all the wrong places? Today, we're going to explore why the Stoics believed that the relentless pursuit of more things, more status, more distractions actually takes us further away from true contentment. Instead, they teach that lasting peace isn't something you find in the aisles of a store or in the zeros on a paycheck. It's something you cultivate within yourself. But what does this really mean in a modern context? Let's find out. Why do we feel the constant need to upgrade our lives? A newer car, a bigger house, the latest gadget. There's always something just beyond our grasp, promising to make us happier, more successful, or more fulfilled. But here's the catch. Every time we reach for that next shiny thing, we find it's not enough. It's like chasing the horizon. No matter how fast you run or how far you go, the horizon keeps moving, always out of reach. The Stoics, however, saw this pursuit for what it really is, a trap. Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, warned that the accumulation of excess doesn't bring freedom or happiness. Instead, it creates dependence. He argued that the more we surround ourselves with, the more we link our well-being to things outside of our control. Think about it. If your happiness depends on having the newest phone, the most luxurious vacations, or constant external validation, what happens when you lose those things? Or worse, what happens when you rise to meet one craving, only for a dozen others to take its place? This cycle doesn't lead to contentment. It leads to restlessness and dissatisfaction. Now let's break this down further. Imagine filling a jar with water, but the jar has a small hole at the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, it keeps leaking out. This jar is like our endless desire for more. We keep trying to fill it with possessions, achievements, and pleasures, but it never stays full. Why? Because the real issue isn't the jar, it's the hole. The Stoics believed that the hole represents our mindset, our inability to define what enough truly means, and unless we address that, no amount of more will ever feel sufficient. Take a moment to reflect on this. What does enough mean to you? Is it a number in your bank account, a certain level of recognition or success, or is it something simpler, more internal? The Stoics would encourage us to redefine enough not as having everything we want, but as wanting what we already have. This shift doesn't mean giving up ambition or goals. It means finding contentment in the present moment instead of perpetually deferring it to some future achievement. So ask yourself, are you chasing the horizon? And if so, what might happen if you stopped running for just a moment? Could it be that enough is already within your grasp? Let's pause for a moment and think about the difference between needs and wants. Imagine this: you're hungry after a long day. Your body needs nourishment. A simple meal would suffice to satisfy that hunger. But instead of grabbing something basic and wholesome, you start craving a gourmet 3-course meal, complete with an expensive dessert. Now, there's nothing wrong with indulging in life's pleasures now and then, but here's the question. Do you really need that elaborate meal to meet your hunger? Or is it a desire masquerading as a necessity? The Stoics were masters at separating what they called the essential from the non-essential. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, taught that this ability to distinguish between needs and wants is central to achieving freedom and inner peace. He explained it like this: true freedom doesn't come from having everything you desire. It comes from mastering your desires. Think about that for a second. If your sense of well-being depends on satisfying every whim, then you're no longer in control. Your desires are. but if you can train yourself to focus on what's truly necessary, you free yourself from the constant pull of wanting more. Here's a simple way to look at it. Your needs are the things that sustain you: food, water, shelter, relationships, and purpose. These are the essentials for a fulfilling life. Everything else, designer clothes, luxury vacations, the latest tech gadgets, falls into the category of wants. Now, the Stoics weren't saying you have to give up all your desires and live like a hermit. Instead, they encouraged us to question whether those desires are actually enhancing our lives or simply distracting us from what we already have. So, how can we put this into practice? Start by reassessing your daily habits around consumption. For example, take a closer look at your spending. Do you find yourself buying things just to feel a temporary sense of joy, only to realize that the happiness fades quickly? Or what about your time? Is it being spent on activities that truly nourish your mind and body, or are you constantly chasing after entertainment and distractions? By identifying these patterns, you can begin to strip away what's unnecessary and focus on what genuinely matters. One practical exercise you might try is a daily reflection inspired by Stoic teachings. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what did I actually need today, and what were the things I only thought I needed? Over time, this practice can help you develop more clarity and self-awareness about your own patterns of desire. Here's another exercise that Epictetus would likely approve of. Occasionally practice doing without. Skip that gourmet meal and settle for something simple. Temporarily step away from luxuries you often take for granted. This isn't about punishing yourself, it's about appreciating how little you really need to thrive. And surprisingly, these moments of simplicity can feel liberating because they remind you that your happiness isn't tied to external extras. So take a moment to reflect. What do you truly need to live well? Not what society tells you, not what ads convince you to want, but what your life truly depends on for well-being and fulfillment. The answer might be much simpler and more freeing than you think. Does external success really equal internal peace? It's an interesting question, isn't it? We live in a world where the lines between the two often blur. Social media, for example, constantly shows us curated highlights of other people's lives: exotic vacations, flawless selfies, career achievements. It's easy to look at those images and think, if only I had that, I'd finally be happy. But here's the truth: external validation, whether it's likes on a post, praise from others, or material success, is fleeting. No matter how much you achieve or acquire, if your sense of self-worth comes from outside sources, it's never truly stable. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, put it this way: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. What he meant is that the external world, the things we own, the recognition we seek, the opinions of others, has no real power over our inner peace unless we give it that power. He argued that the soul, or your inner self, is independent of these external factors. True contentment comes not from what others think of you, but from how you think and act in alignment with your values. Now let's bring this into a modern context. Think about social media. It's a perfect example of how we often seek external validation. You post a picture, anxiously wait for likes and comments to roll in, and feel a rush of satisfaction when they do. But what happens when those likes stop coming, or when someone else's post outshines yours? That fleeting moment of happiness you felt is quickly replaced by insecurity, maybe even self-doubt. The problem with relying on external validation like this is that it's never enough. No matter how many likes or compliments you get, it doesn't fill that deeper need for self-acceptance. And it's not just social media. This extends into every area of life: chasing promotions at work, buying the biggest house on the block, or trying to keep up with the latest trends. While achieving success or enjoying nice things isn't inherently bad, the Stoics would ask, are you doing these things because they truly align with your values, or because you're hoping they'll make others see you in a certain light? If it's the latter, you're giving others the keys to your happiness, and that's a precarious place to be. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine you're holding a mirror, but instead of reflecting your own image, it shows how others see you. That mirror constantly changes based on their opinions. One moment you feel admired, the next you feel criticized. Now ask yourself, how much control do you really have over that mirror? The answer is none. What you can control, however, is how much importance you place on it. So, how can we shift our mindset? The Stoics suggest returning to what you can control, your thoughts, actions, and how you choose to respond to life's circumstances. Instead of basing your happiness on how others perceive you, start focusing on whether you're living in alignment with your own values. Take a moment to reflect how much of your happiness depends on external approval, and what would happen if you let go of the need for others to validate your worth. Would your inner peace grow stronger? The ultimate takeaway here is this: external things, whether it's status, possessions, or praise, are temporary and out of your control. But your inner state, that's yours to cultivate. Real power, as Marcus Aurelius said, comes from recognizing this and learning to find strength within. So, the next time you feel the pull to seek approval or validation outside yourself, pause and ask, am I giving away my power, or can I find fulfillment right here within my own mind? When was the last time you paused to appreciate the things you already have? Not the big, flashy milestones, but the simple, everyday moments that often go unnoticed. For the Stoics, this practice wasn't just important, it was essential. They knew that gratitude was one of the most powerful tools for cultivating contentment. In fact, they made it a daily habit. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, often reminded his followers to appreciate life's simple gifts, emphasizing that joy isn't found in chasing after the next big thing, but in noticing the value of what's already in front of you. Let's consider this for a moment. The Stoics lived centuries ago, long before modern conveniences. Yet they practiced gratitude for things as basic as a warm meal, a clear morning sky, or even the companionship of a close friend. Now contrast that with how we live today. When was the last time you truly appreciated the roof over your head, the food on your plate, or the device you're using to watch this video? More often than not, we take these things for granted, rushing past them in the pursuit of something better. But the Stoics would argue that this mindset blinds us to the abundance already present in our lives. Seneca wrote that nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart. To him, gratitude wasn't just about being polite. It was a profound acknowledgement that life's most meaningful joys come from appreciating what we already have, rather than constantly longing for what we lack. And here's the beauty of it: gratitude shifts your perspective. Instead of focusing on scarcity, you begin to see the richness all around you. It's like putting on a new pair of glasses that reveal opportunities for joy everywhere, if only we take the time to notice them. So how can we bring this Stoic practice into our own lives? One simple way is through gratitude journaling. Each day, take a moment to write down 3 things you're genuinely thankful for. These don't have to be grand or extraordinary. In fact, the smaller and more specific, the better. Maybe it's the sound of rain on your window, the laugh of a loved one, or even the first sip of your morning coffee. The act of writing them down helps shift your focus from what's missing to what's already there. Over time, you'll find that gratitude becomes second nature, rewiring your mind to seek out the positive rather than dwelling on the negative. Another practice the Stoics would encourage is to simply pause and reflect before you end your day. As you lie in bed, think about the moments that brought you a sense of peace or joy. Did someone smile at you? Did you feel the sun on your skin? Did you read a passage in a book that made you think? These moments, however small, are the building blocks of a fulfilling life if we take the time to acknowledge them. Here's something worth reflecting on right now. What small thing in your life already brings you joy? It could be as simple as the comfort of your favorite chair, the ability to take a deep breath, or the support of a friend or family member. Take a moment to name it in your mind and notice how it feels to focus on gratitude instead of longing. The Stoics understood that contentment isn't about having everything, it's about recognizing that you already have enough. And the more you practice gratitude, the more you realize that the things you once overlooked are, in fact, the things that make life meaningful. So ask yourself, what would change if, starting today, you began practicing gratitude like the Stoics did? Could it bring you closer to the peace and fulfillment you've been seeking all along? How often do we find ourselves buying something on a whim? A new gadget, a pair of shoes, or even a snack we don't really need. It happens so quickly, often without much thought. Maybe it's out of habit, maybe it's to fill a moment of boredom, or maybe it's because it simply feels good in the moment. But here's the thing, these impulsive choices rarely bring lasting satisfaction. Instead, they often leave us wondering, why did I even buy this? The Stoics, particularly Epictetus, were keenly aware of this tendency in human nature, the impulse to grab at more without truly questioning why. And their advice, slow down, pause, reflect. Epictetus famously taught that it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This applies not just to the challenges we face, but to our desires as well. When we feel the urge to acquire something, whether it's a material possession, a fleeting pleasure, or even someone's approval, the Stoics encourage us to step back and ask ourselves one simple question: is this necessary? In other words, is this desire coming from a genuine need, or is it just a passing impulse driven by habit or external influences? This practice of pausing and questioning is deeply rooted in mindfulness. Mindfulness, in the Stoic sense, is about cultivating an awareness of your thoughts, feelings, and impulses in the present moment. It's about catching yourself in the act of wanting and asking, where is this desire really coming from? Modern research even backs this up. Studies have shown that practicing mindfulness can help reduce impulsive behavior and create more intentional decision-making. So how can you bring this Stoic mindfulness into your daily life? Start small. The next time you feel the urge to buy something or even chase after anything you think will make you happier, take a deep breath. Yes, just one deep breath. This simple pause can create a moment of clarity, a chance to interrupt the automatic cycle of want and acquire. In that pause, ask yourself, do I really need this? Or is this just a momentary craving? If the answer is no, try walking away. You might be surprised to find that the desire fades just as quickly as it arose. Another technique the Stoics would recommend is developing a habit of delayed gratification. For example, if you see something you want, commit to waiting 24 hours before deciding whether to go through with the purchase. This gives you time to reflect on whether it's aligned with your values or simply a reaction to external pressures, like a flashy ad or a trendy product. Often you'll find that the urge passes, leaving you with more clarity and more money in your wallet. Here's a scenario to consider. Imagine you're scrolling through an online store and see something you have to have. What if, instead of clicking buy, you paused and asked yourself why? Is it because you feel it will fill a gap in your life? Is it because it's on sale and you're afraid of missing out? Or is it because, deep down, you're seeking a momentary escape from discomfort or boredom? This kind of mindful reflection, though simple, can transform your relationship with desire. Let's take this a step further. Think about how much of your day is driven by chasing after things, whether it's possessions, recognition, or fleeting pleasures. Do you ever stop to assess where those desires are coming from? Are they truly yours, or are they planted by social norms, advertisements, or comparisons to others? The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from freeing ourselves from these external influences, and mindfulness is the key to doing just that. So here's something to reflect on. The next time you feel yourself wanting more, pause and ask what's behind this desire. Is it a true need or just a fleeting impulse? By practicing mindfulness in these moments, you can begin to unhook yourself from the cycle of endless wanting and instead focus on what truly brings peace and fulfillment. After all, as the Stoics remind us, less is often more, especially when it comes to our own happiness. Imagine waking up in a space that feels open, calm, and peaceful. There's no clutter on the floor, no overflowing shelves demanding your attention, no to-do list scribbled with tasks you've barely thought through. Your mind feels light, unburdened by unnecessary distractions. Now take that image and ask yourself, how much more freedom would you feel if both your surroundings and your thoughts were this clear? This is the kind of life the Stoics envisioned when they spoke about simplicity. Not simplicity for the sake of deprivation, but for the sake of freedom from the noise, both external and internal, that keeps us from living with clarity and purpose. For the Stoics, simplicity wasn't just a practical lifestyle choice, it was a moral one. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, often spoke about the dangers of excess and the way material possessions can weigh us down. He argued that wealth, rather than being freeing, often creates more problems. You don't just own things, in many ways they begin to own you. You worry about losing them, maintaining them, protecting them, and sometimes even acquiring more of them. Seneca once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor." In other words, the more we cling to things, physical clutter, mental clutter, even emotional baggage, the more we give away our freedom. But how do we take this ancient principle and apply it to our modern lives? Let's start with the physical. Look around your living space. How much of what you see do you truly use or value? The Stoics would tell us to question why we hold on to so many things. Is it out of habit, fear of letting go, a sense that we might need them someday, even if that day never comes? By decluttering your physical environment, you're not just making your space tidier, you're clearing mental space as well. Think about the energy you spend managing clutter. Every item you own takes up a tiny bit of your attention. The fewer things you have, the less energy you waste on what doesn't matter, and the more you can focus on things that do. Now, let's take this idea a step further. Simplicity isn't just about your possessions, it's also about your mind. How often do you feel overwhelmed by a never-ending to-do list, a constant stream of notifications, or the pressure to keep up with everything happening around you? The Stoics would encourage us to declutter our thoughts as well. Focus on what's essential, your values, your relationships, your growth as a person, and let go of the distractions that don't align with those priorities. If you try to do everything, you'll often end up doing very little. But by simplifying your focus, you can give your best energy to what truly matters. There's a modern practice that aligns perfectly with this Stoic principle, minimalism. It's not about getting rid of everything you own, but about intentionally keeping only what serves a purpose or brings you joy. This could mean decluttering your closet, your schedule, or even the commitment you take on. For the Stoics, living simply wasn't about sacrifice. It was about sharpening your ability to see what's truly important. The less you have competing for your attention, the more clearly you can focus on virtue, purpose, and clarity of thought. So, here's something to reflect on. What could you let go of to feel freer? Maybe it's that drawer full of things you haven't touched in years. Maybe it's a habit that no longer serves you. Or maybe it's the mental clutter of constantly comparing yourself to others. Each thing you release creates space for peace, space for growth, and space for the freedom the Stoics cherished so deeply. Simplicity isn't just about living with less, it's about living with intention. It's about stripping away the non-essentials so you can focus on what truly brings meaning and joy to your life. And in that sense, simplicity isn't restrictive, it's liberating. So, as you go about your day, ask yourself, what's one thing physical, mental, or emotional that you could let go of today to bring a little more clarity and freedom to your life? You might find that the path to true freedom starts with just one small step toward simplicity. Imagine a fortress not made of stone or steel, but one built within your mind. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled with both strength and wisdom, spoke of this concept often. He believed that true security and stability don't come from external walls or material wealth, but from an unshakable foundation of internal values. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." For the Stoics, the idea of building a fortress within wasn't just a metaphor, it was a way of life. They understood that the storms of life, loss, failure, disappointment are inevitable. But what determines whether we crumble under their weight or stand firm is whether we've anchored ourselves in lasting, internal virtues like wisdom, courage, and self-discipline, rather than fleeting external goods. Let's break this down. Material things, wealth, possessions, success, can certainly provide temporary comfort, but they're inherently unstable. They can be taken away, lost, or destroyed in an instant. Think of someone who's tied their identity and happiness to their career. What happens when the promotion doesn't come, or the company downsizes, or retirement arrives? Without something deeper to fall back on, their sense of purpose and stability can vanish as quickly as their title. But when we focus on cultivating internal values like the Stoics did, our happiness becomes something no one, not circumstance, not others, can take away. Imagine a man named James who worked tirelessly to climb the corporate ladder, believing that his career defined his worth. For decades, he tied his self-esteem to his professional achievements, the car he drove, and the accolades he received. Then one day, he lost his job unexpectedly. For months, he spiraled into fear and self-doubt, feeling like his world had collapsed. But what if James had spent those years also working on his internal values, on becoming wise enough to handle setbacks, courageous enough to rebuild from scratch, and disciplined enough to maintain perspective? The external loss would still hurt, but his inner foundation would remain intact, helping him weather the storm. The Stoics believed that this kind of resilience comes from anchoring your sense of self in virtues rather than external circumstances. Wisdom allows us to see life clearly, to accept what's beyond our control and focus on what we can change. Courage helps us face life's challenges with determination, even when they seem insurmountable. Self-discipline ensures we stay grounded, not giving into fleeting pleasures or impulsive reactions. Together, these virtues create a stability that no external loss can shake. Take Marcus Aurelius himself as an example. As emperor, he faced constant warfare, political betrayal, and even the deaths of his loved ones. Yet, through all this, he found strength not in his title or wealth, but in his commitment to living by his principles. He often reminded himself and others that external chaos doesn't have to disturb internal peace. His meditations are filled with reflections on how to stay rooted in virtue, even when the world around you is in turmoil. Now let's bring this back to you. What are the virtues that form your own fortress? Is it the wisdom to make thoughtful decisions, the courage to face life's uncertainties, or the patience to endure challenges with grace? Reflect on this for a moment. Are you building your sense of stability on something lasting, or are you leaning too heavily on things that could vanish at any moment? The truth is, no life is free of difficulty. But by focusing on what we can control, our values, our actions, our responses, we can create a kind of inner stability that no storm can destroy. So ask yourself, what virtues anchor your life and how can you strengthen them starting today? In the end, as the Stoics knew, the strongest fortress you'll ever build is the one you create within your own mind. Have you ever felt that pang of anxiety scrolling through social media, seeing others travel to exotic places, land dream jobs, or celebrate milestones while you're sitting at home feeling like you're missing out? That sense of unease, that creeping thought of, why am I not doing that? It's a symptom of what we now call the fear of missing out, or FOMO. But here's the thing, while FOMO might feel like a modern problem fueled by technology, the Stoics not only recognized this emotional struggle but offered timeless wisdom to cure it. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the understanding that we only control two things, our thoughts and our actions. Everything else, what others do, what they achieve, the circumstances of the world around us, is completely outside our control. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters." In the context of FOMO, this is incredibly liberating. The Stoics remind us that the feelings of inadequacy or pressure we experience when comparing ourselves to others aren't caused by their actions or possessions. They're caused by how we perceive those things. And because we control our perceptions, we're not at the mercy of FOMO unless we allow it. But let's examine why FOMO has such a strong grip on us in the first place. At its core, FOMO stems from a fear of falling behind, a sense that if we're not doing or experiencing what others are, we're somehow failing at life. Social media amplifies this fear, presenting us with curated highlights of others' lives, often making us feel like we're inadequate or not doing enough. The Stoics would challenge us to ask, what are we really chasing and who decides what's worth chasing? When you dig deeper, FOMO often has less to do with what we truly value and more to do with external pressures and unrealistic comparisons. Epictetus teaches us to focus only on what truly matters and what aligns with our values. For the Stoics, the ultimate goal isn't keeping up with others, it's living a life of virtue. That means cultivating wisdom, courage, self-discipline, and justice. None of these things depend on whether you've been to the trendiest restaurant or experienced the latest travel destination. Instead, they depend on how you live your life, moment by moment, staying true to what's meaningful to you. When you start to embrace this perspective, the achievements or possessions of others lose their power to influence your happiness. Let's bring this idea into a relatable scenario. Imagine a friend posts pictures of their luxury vacation, and you start to feel that familiar pang of envy, thinking, I should be doing something like that. Now pause and ask yourself, what's driving that thought? Do you actually value travel in the same way they do, or is the desire just a reaction to seeing their post? And even if you do value travel, does seeing their experience diminish the meaning or joy in your own life? The Stoics would encourage you to step back and reframe your perspective. If travel aligns with your values, then work toward it without letting someone else's timeline rush you. If it doesn't matter to you, then let it go, knowing your worth isn't tied to keeping up with others. Here's a reflective thought to consider. What unnecessary pressures are you putting on yourself because of FOMO? Are you overcommitting your time, money, or energy just to avoid feeling left out? And if so, does that behavior align with what you really care about, what truly brings meaning to your life? The Stoics would remind us that true happiness isn't found in what others are doing. It's found in living according to our own principles. Ultimately, Stoicism offers a powerful antidote to FOMO, the realization that life isn't a competition or a checklist of experiences. The more you focus on what's within your control, your values, your growth, your ability to cultivate gratitude, the less power external comparisons will have over you. As Epictetus would ask, why suffer over what doesn't truly belong to you? So the next time FOMO creeps in, challenge yourself to pause, reflect, and realign your focus on what matters most to you. When's the last time you chose to go without something you didn't truly need? Not because you had to, but because you wanted to. It's an unusual question, isn't it? After all, we're often surrounded by convenience, comforts, and luxuries, and the idea of deliberately stepping away from them might seem unnecessary, maybe even uncomfortable. But for the Stoics, this practice of voluntary discomfort wasn't about deprivation for its own sake. It was about cultivating freedom, freedom from attachment, freedom from fear, and freedom from the idea that our happiness depends on anything external. Seneca, the Roman philosopher, saw this practice as an essential part of life. He believed that by occasionally experiencing discomfort, whether by fasting, dressing plainly, or living as though he had less, he could train his mind to adapt to hardship and appreciate what he already had. He once wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" The key here is that Seneca's goal wasn't to punish himself, but to remind himself that what we often fear, losing comfort, losing luxury, might not be so frightening after all. He was proving to himself that he could still endure, thrive, and even find peace without the things most people cling to. Imagine skipping a meal not because you have to, but because you want to practice gratitude for the abundance you usually enjoy. Or spending a day without your smartphone to remind yourself that you're not as dependent on it as you think. These small acts of voluntary discomfort can seem trivial, but they're powerful. They help you confront your attachments and realize that happiness doesn't have to come from the things you think you can't live without. Instead, it can come from within. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine you lose something you value, a luxury you've grown accustomed to, or a habit that brings you comfort. If you've never practiced going without it, the loss might feel overwhelming, even unbearable. But if you've already prepared yourself, if you've shown yourself that you can live with less, the loss loses its sting. This is the resilience the Stoics sought to cultivate. They weren't trying to make life harder, they were practicing how to meet life's hardships with grace and strength. Practicing voluntary discomfort could be as simple as skipping your morning coffee for a day, or wearing your least favorite outfit instead of something that makes you feel your best. It could mean walking instead of driving, turning off the heater for a night, or even eating a very plain meal while reflecting on how fortunate you are to normally enjoy more. These aren't grand gestures, but small moments where you consciously choose to let go of excess and experience life on simpler terms. Now, here's something worth reflecting on. Could you find contentment even with less? If everything you considered a luxury was stripped away, what would you still have to be thankful for? This practice isn't about living in fear of losing what you have. It's about recognizing that your well-being isn't tied to those things in the first place. It builds a sense of confidence in your ability to adapt and find peace, no matter the circumstances. What would it look like to embrace voluntary discomfort in your own life? Could you let go of something small, even temporarily, to loosen its hold on you? And in doing so, could you discover that you're stronger, freer, and more resilient than you thought? The Stoics believed that freedom begins with acknowledging how little we truly need to live well. Perhaps you'll find that same freedom by taking just one step toward doing without. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This simple yet profound statement from Epictetus challenges one of the most deeply ingrained beliefs in modern society, that success is defined by accumulation, more money, more possessions, more recognition. But have you ever stopped to question whether this definition of success, one that we often adopt without much thought, actually leads to happiness? The Stoics would argue that it doesn't. Instead, they believed that true success lies not in what we own or achieve, but in how we live, specifically, how well we live in alignment with our virtues. For the Stoics, success was measured by the qualities of your character, not the size of your bank account or the accolades on your resume. They believed the ultimate goal in life wasn't to endlessly chase external rewards, but to cultivate virtues like wisdom, courage, self-discipline, and justice. These are things no one can take away from you, things that remain with you regardless of your circumstances. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who could have easily been consumed by power and wealth, often reminded himself that true greatness wasn't about status or material gains. In his Meditations, he wrote, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." To the Stoics, living a virtuous life was the only true measure of success. But let's bring this idea into today's world. Think about how we're taught to define success from an early age. It's often tied to milestones: getting a prestigious job, buying a big house, driving the right car, achieving fame or recognition. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with these goals, the danger lies in the belief that they will bring lasting fulfillment. How many stories have you heard about people who seemingly have everything, the wealth, the status, the admiration, yet still feel empty or unfulfilled? That's because external success, despite its allure, is fleeting. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole at the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it never feels like enough. Take a modern example. Someone spends decades climbing the corporate ladder, sacrificing time with family and friends, their health, and even their own passions in the pursuit of a corner office. When they finally get there, they realize the satisfaction lasts only a moment before they're left asking, "Now what?" The Stoics would say the problem isn't the pursuit itself, but the misplaced belief that external achievements alone can provide lasting happiness. They knew that true contentment comes from within, from living in alignment with your values and focusing on what you can control. So, how do we redefine success through a Stoic lens? Start by asking yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? What values do I want to embody? Instead of measuring your worth by how much you've accomplished or acquired, focus on how you handle challenges, how you treat others, and whether your actions align with your principles. For example, did you respond to a difficult situation with patience and wisdom? Did you act justly even when it was inconvenient? These are the moments that define real success according to the Stoics. Here's a reflective prompt to consider. How do you define success? Is it based on external markers, things others can see and admire? Or is it rooted in something deeper, like your personal growth or the impact you have on others? The Stoics would encourage you to think about whether your current definition aligns with what truly matters to you. If not, what might you need to change? By reframing success in this way, you can free yourself from the endless cycle of striving for more and more, and instead focus on what brings genuine fulfillment. Because, as the Stoics taught, success isn't about having great possessions, it's about having few wants and living well. So, how will you choose to define success moving forward? How often do we catch ourselves wishing for more, daydreaming about a future where everything is perfect, or reminiscing about a past we think was better? It's almost second nature, isn't it? We tell ourselves, "I'll be happy when I achieve this," or "Life will be easier if I just had that." But the Stoics recognize that this constant longing, whether for more possessions, better circumstances, or even a different version of ourselves, is precisely what keeps us from experiencing true peace. Why? Because it pulls us away from the only thing we can truly hold onto, the present moment. Marcus Aurelius, in his private writings, repeatedly emphasized the importance of living fully in the now. One of his most famous reflections reads, "Confine yourself to the present." For Marcus, and for the Stoics as a whole, the present moment wasn't something to escape or improve upon. It was something to embrace fully, just as it is. They understood a profound truth that we often overlook. When we're perpetually chasing after what we don't have, we lose sight of the value in what we already do. The Stoics saw acceptance of the present not as passive resignation, but as active engagement, a choice to fully participate in life as it unfolds, rather than constantly yearning for a different reality. Let's ground this idea with an example. Imagine you're having a simple cup of tea or coffee in the morning, but instead of savoring the warmth of the mug in your hands, the rich aroma, or the quiet moment of stillness, your mind is already racing to your to-do list. Or worse, you're scrolling through your phone, seeing someone else's picture-perfect breakfast, and feeling like your moment isn't enough. This is the trap of endless wanting. The Stoics would encourage us to pause, even in these small moments, and bring our attention to the present. That simple act of awareness, of truly tasting your drink, feeling the chair beneath you, noticing the light filtering through the window, can transform even the most ordinary moments into something meaningful. So how can we start appreciating the present moment more? The first step is slowing down. Modern life moves quickly, often pulling us in a dozen directions at once. But slowing down gives us the opportunity to notice what's happening right here and now. Start with small, intentional practices. The next time you eat a meal, put your phone away and focus on the textures and flavors of your food. When you're walking, instead of rushing to your destination, pay attention to the rhythm of your steps or the sounds around you. Even something as simple as taking 3 deep breaths before starting your next task can help ground you in the present. Another powerful practice is gratitude. At the end of each day, reflect on something in the present moment that you appreciated. It doesn't have to be monumental. It could be the smile of a stranger, the sound of your favorite song, or even the feeling of clean sheets as you go to bed. By focusing on the little things, you train your mind to see the beauty in the life you're living now, rather than always wishing for what's next. Here's a question to reflect on. What's one way you could appreciate the present moment more today? Maybe it's spending 5 minutes watching the sunrise, fully immersing yourself in a conversation with a loved one without distractions, or simply taking a moment to close your eyes and feel the breath moving in and out of your body. These don't have to be grand gestures often. The simplest moments are the most profound. The Stoics remind us that life isn't happening in the past or the future, it's happening right now. By accepting the present moment exactly as it is, we let go of the endless pursuit of more and discover contentment in the here and now. So how will you choose to savor this moment? What could you notice, appreciate, or embrace that's already in front of you? After all, as Marcus Aurelius understood, this very moment is all we ever truly have. So, what have the Stoics taught us about the idea that you don't need more to live a good life? Throughout this journey, we've explored some of their most transformative principles that remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. We've learned from Seneca that gratitude is the key to contentment, that recognizing and appreciating what we already have can shift our perspective from scarcity to abundance. Marcus Aurelius reminded us of the power of simplicity and staying anchored in the present moment, showing us that true peace isn't found in complexity or clutter, but in clarity and focus. And Epictetus taught us that happiness is rooted in internal virtues, wisdom, courage, self-discipline, not in external possessions or achievements that are beyond our control. At its core, Stoicism challenges the cultural narrative that happiness lies in acquiring more. Instead, it asks us to turn inward, to realize that the good life isn't something to chase out there, it's something to cultivate right here within ourselves. As Epicurus, whose philosophy often overlapped with Stoicism, famously said, "He who is not happy with little will not be happy with more." The Stoics lived by this truth. They understood that no amount of wealth, fame, or success can bring lasting peace if your mind remains unsettled. But if you can master your thoughts, align your actions with your values, and appreciate the present moment, you'll find that you already have everything you need. So, as we wrap up, I invite you to take a moment to reflect on your own life. Ask yourself, where am I searching for happiness? Is it in things outside of my control, like possessions, status, or the approval of others? Or am I focusing on cultivating gratitude, living simply, and strengthening my inner virtues? These are not easy questions, but they're worth asking because the answers have the power to transform the way you live. And here's a small challenge. Choose one Stoic principle we've discussed today, whether it's practicing gratitude, simplifying your life, or pausing to focus on the present, and try applying it this week. See how it shifts your perspective and brings you closer to the peace the Stoics spoke of. If you feel inspired, share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear how these ideas resonate with you. And if these principles feel like something you want to explore further, consider subscribing to the channel so we can continue this journey together. Remember, you don't need more to live a good life. As the Stoics have shown us, happiness isn't about what you have, it's about how you live. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then,